INFJs are often seen as walking contradictions, making them some of the most confusing people you'll ever meet. On the surface, they can appear calm, gentle, and reserved, almost detached. But beneath that quiet exterior lies a storm of emotions, insights, and intuitive perceptions that are anything but passive. You might think you've got them figured out because they nod, smile, and listen with deep empathy, yet the moment you believe you've pinned them down, they shift again, emotionally, mentally, even spiritually. They exist in layers, and just when you peel back one, you realize there are 10 more beneath it. If you're an INFJ, ensure to check out our INFJ Mastery course. The link is in the description of this video. They often speak with kindness, offering warmth and understanding like it's second nature. And yet, behind their supportive demeanor, there's a calculating mind constantly analyzing everything. Your words, your tone, your energy, your silences. They may seem like they're simply present in the moment, but they're 3 steps ahead, mapping out emotional dynamics, assessing authenticity, sensing if something isn't aligning. This dual presence, being fully in the now, while also processing everything on a deeper level, is part of what makes them so enigmatic. You feel seen but also studied. They are unpredictable. One moment, an INFJ may seem like your most loyal confidant, someone who offers unwavering emotional support. They'll sit with you in your darkest hour, feeling what you feel as if it were their own pain. But then comes the silence, the withdrawal, the sudden emotional distancing. You wonder what changed. Was it something you said? Something you didn't say? Often, it wasn't anything you consciously did. It's just how INFJs recalibrate. They retreat not to punish, but to process, to protect their peace, to untangle what they've absorbed. And yet, to those on the receiving end, it can feel like abandonment or emotional whiplash. That contradiction between deep intimacy and sudden solitude is what makes being close to them so hard to grasp. Their emotions run deep, but they don't always share them openly. They're selective with their vulnerability, often appearing mysterious or emotionally guarded. And yet, they seem to understand your emotions better than you do. This imbalance, where they feel you deeply but hold themselves back, can make others feel disoriented. How is it possible for someone to be so emotionally available and yet so emotionally distant at the same time? The answer lies in their complex inner world, one that's often too sacred, too intense, and too misunderstood to be shared freely. INFJs also confuse people with their ability to be both idealistic and deeply cynical. They believe in the goodness of humanity, often carrying grand visions of how the world should be, how people can evolve, how love can transform lives. But beneath that vision is a deep, piercing awareness of the darkness in people, the flaws in systems, and the harshness of reality. This paradox can make them seem disjointed to others. How can someone so hopeful also seem so disillusioned? The truth is, INFJs don't see just one side of the coin. They hold both the beauty and the brokenness simultaneously, and that duality lives in everything they do. Socially, INFJs are a contradiction as well. They crave meaningful connection, yet are easily drained by prolonged interaction. They want to be understood, yet rarely feel like anyone truly gets them. They can be warm and expressive in one moment, then withdrawn and unreadable the next. They'll show up for others consistently, but when they're struggling, they vanish into themselves, refusing help, hiding their pain behind thoughtful smiles and quiet reassurances. It's no wonder people are often left wondering where they stand with an INFJ. You can know them for years and still feel like you've only scratched the surface. Their minds are another source of mystery. INFJs are deep thinkers, constantly reflecting, analyzing, questioning. They pick up on subtle emotional cues and spiritual undercurrents that most people don't even notice. They may express themselves through metaphors, symbols, or a layered language that makes you pause and think, what do they really mean by that? Their communication style often mirrors their thought process. Complex, indirect, poetic. They may say one thing, but feel another. Or they might withhold their full truth out of fear of overwhelming others. Conversations with them can feel like riddles wrapped in kindness. Perhaps most confusing of all is the way INFJs can seem so peaceful on the outside while waging emotional and psychological wars within. Their calm demeanor can be misleading. People assume they're fine because they appear composed, thoughtful, and self-contained. But INFJs carry the weight of everything they feel, every injustice, every emotional wound, every unmet expectation, internally. They rarely explode outwardly. Instead, they implode, their silent suffering hidden beneath their serene appearance. And because they rarely ask for help or show visible distress, those closest to them are often stunned when they finally express that they're not okay. The point is, INFJs confuse people because they don't operate in linear or predictable ways. They live in paradox. Their confusing nature isn't a mask. They are genuinely complex beings living at the intersection of deep logic and powerful emotion. Another confusing aspect of the INFJ is how they balance idealism with deep realism. They may dream of a better world, speak passionately about meaningful change, and inspire those around them to believe and hope. But they are not naive. They see the cracks, the shadows, and the subtle manipulations most others miss. This blend of visionary thinking and razor-sharp perception creates a kind of paradox that's hard to reconcile. How can someone be so hopeful and yet so haunted? Their internal landscape is filled with layers most people never access. An INFJ often lives multiple lives internally, one that's lived externally for the world to see, and many others that exist in silence, in thought, in emotion, in dreams. You may know them as the soft-spoken friend who always listens, but you might never see the part of them that writes poetry at 2 a.m. because they can't make peace with something someone said 5 years ago. You might see their calm and organized exterior, but not the hurricane of thought spirals and intuitive downloads they're constantly processing in the background. INFJs confuse people in the way they approach conflict, too. They are naturally peace-seeking and deeply empathetic, often avoiding conflict when they sense it will only create more harm. But when their internal boundaries are crossed, they become unexpectedly assertive, sometimes even ruthless. Their moral compass is firm, and when something violates it, the INFJ who was once silent and compliant can suddenly seem like a completely different person. This shift can be jarring to others, who were lulled into believing the INFJ would always be passive, always agreeable. What people don't realize is that INFJs are not passive. They are simply patient. But patience has a limit, and once crossed, their clarity and conviction become terrifyingly sharp. Another reason INFJs are so confusing is their ability to be mirrors. They often reflect back what others project onto them, allowing people to see what they want to see. It's not that INFJs are trying to deceive. It's more that they intuitively adapt to the emotional tone of the person in front of them. This can lead people to believe they have a special connection with the INFJ, only to later discover that the INFJ behaves just as compassionately with everyone. The depth of their emotional resonance is so rare that people often think they've found someone who truly understands them. And they have. But that doesn't mean the INFJ has revealed themselves in return. This dynamic leaves others feeling both deeply connected and strangely distant from the INFJ, unsure of whether they truly know them at all. Then there's the duality in how INFJs crave both solitude and connection. They want to be loved deeply, but also want their emotional space. They can feel profoundly lonely, yet intentionally withdraw from others. They love hard, but also fear being consumed by love. This constant push and pull makes their relationships unpredictable and difficult to navigate, especially for those who desire consistency. You may think things are going perfectly, but then the INFJ pulls away to process something that has nothing to do with you. And unless you understand their need for internal harmony, this behavior can feel confusing or even hurtful. Emotionally, they operate in a way that defies social norms. They don't do small talk well, nor do they like to pretend. They often see through facades and crave authenticity in its rawest form, which can be overwhelming for people who aren't used to that level of emotional transparency. Yet paradoxically, INFJs can be slow to open up. They are comfortable diving into your soul, but reluctant to offer the same vulnerability in return. It's not that they don't want to connect. It's that they need to feel deeply safe before they can truly show themselves. This imbalance, where they know you deeply, but remain largely unknowable, creates a mystique that people both admire and resent. INFJs also confuse people by the way they blend spiritual insight with grounded logic. They are intuitive feelers who also possess a razor-sharp sense of reasoning. They can speak in metaphors and symbols one moment, then offer a highly analytical breakdown of a situation the next. This ability to toggle between emotional and intellectual realms makes them seem like old souls, timeless, wise, yet hard to categorize. They're often mistaken for extroverts because they can be engaging and articulate, especially when discussing topics they care deeply about. But that energy burns fast, and they often need days to recover from just one intense social experience. INFJs are constant analyzing of both themselves and other people. They rarely take things at face value. Every conversation, glance, or comment is filtered through an intricate internal system of meaning, pattern recognition, and emotional resonance. While others move on quickly from simple interactions, INFJs are often still unraveling layers of subtext days later. They notice subtle shifts in tone, hidden motives, and emotional cues others overlook, which makes them behave in ways that seem overly intense or deeply intuitive to the point of being almost eerie. People often don't know how the INFJ knew something, because INFJs don't always explain their process. It's internal, instinctive, and difficult to articulate. They are masters of emotional disguise. On the outside, they may seem calm, collected, and agreeable, even when turmoil rages within. They can appear as the stable emotional rock for others, while silently unraveling inside. This ability to compartmentalize makes it hard for people to really know what's going on with them. Friends might assume the INFJ is fine, when in reality, they are exhausted or quietly heartbroken. This internal containment is not about hiding who they are out of deceit. It's a coping mechanism built from years of being misunderstood, dismissed, or overwhelmed by the emotions of others. So they protect their truth, offering only pieces at a time, never the whole, never too much. INFJs are deeply loyal and committed, but they also have a threshold that, once crossed, flips a switch few ever see coming. They will often endure discomfort, emotional neglect, or toxic dynamics for much longer than most people, because they see the potential in others and want to believe the best. But once they reach the point of emotional clarity, once they truly realize that a relationship or environment is misaligned, they will detach in a way that feels sudden, cold, or final. For those around them, it feels abrupt and shocking. But for the INFJ, it was a decision made long ago, quietly and internally, long before they acted on it. They don't burn bridges impulsively. They let them rot in silence until it's time to walk away. If you're an INFJ, ensure to check out our INFJ Mastery course. The link is in the description of this video. Their silence can be unnerving. Unlike most people, INFJs don't speak just to fill space. They often pause, reflect, and internalize before sharing anything. In a fast-paced world that rewards immediate reaction and constant expression, this restraint can make them seem distant, disinterested, or hard to read. But their silence is often where their power lies. It's in those quiet moments that they're processing, evaluating, and connecting the invisible dots. When they do speak, their words often carry weight. But for people unfamiliar with their rhythm, the silence can feel like emotional withholding rather than the thoughtful patience it truly is. INFJs can be highly expressive in artistic, spiritual, or intellectual domains while remaining closed off in daily, casual interactions. They may pour their soul into a painting, a poem, or a piece of writing, yet struggle to say how they feel in a simple conversation. This disconnect can make others feel like they only get glimpses of the INFJ's true self through what they create, but not in direct engagement. And it's true. In many ways, INFJs feel safer expressing their inner world through symbolic or creative outlets, where their depth is received without interruption, invalidation, or judgment. They are also extremely adaptable. INFJs can be chameleons, subtly shifting their tone, demeanor, and energy to match their environment, not out of manipulation, but because they intuitively feel the emotional needs of a room. This makes them blend in almost too well, often causing others to underestimate their uniqueness. People assume the INFJ is easygoing or simple because they don't always push back or assert themselves in obvious ways. But beneath that adaptable exterior is a very defined, deeply independent mind that may be quietly disagreeing or mentally disengaged, even while smiling politely. The INFJ's ability to shift between emotional warmth and analytical detachment adds to the sense of unpredictability. One moment, they're offering profound compassion, understanding your pain before you've even verbalized it. The next, they're standing in internal distance, dissecting the interaction from a psychological or philosophical lens. This movement between feeling and thinking, empathy and analysis, is seamless for them, but confusing for those who can't track how someone's so emotionally tuned and can also be so mysteriously removed at times. It's not coldness. It's their way of maintaining clarity while navigating emotionally charged spaces. Because INFJs are so good at mirroring the emotional atmosphere around them, people often project their own assumptions onto them. Others see in the INFJ what they want to see: a kindred spirit, a rescuer, a quiet rebel, or an old soul. And INFJs, out of empathy and an aversion to confrontation, may unconsciously play along with these roles. But over time, this builds layers of misunderstanding, where even those closest to them believe they know the INFJ, when in reality, they've only met the version the INFJ allowed them to see. This quiet misalignment can leave the INFJ feeling deeply alone, even in the company of others. They also have a complex, yet unique way they seem to communicate. They rarely say things outright. Instead, they speak in metaphors, implications, or emotionally layered language. They might express hurt through silence, disappointment through sudden distance, or love through acts of service rather than words. Those who lack the emotional sensitivity to decode these subtle signals often misread or miss the message entirely. INFJs don't do this to be difficult. They genuinely believe that truth lives between the lines, and they hope others will meet them there. When people don't, INFJs retreat further, reinforcing the belief that few are capable of truly seeing them. Their unpredictability doesn't come from a lack of consistency in values or character. It stems from their inner complexity. INFJs often hold several truths at once. They can forgive someone completely, yet feel the need to distance themselves permanently. They can love someone deeply and still walk away in silence. They can be fascinated by human behavior, at the same time utterly drained by being around people. These contradictions are not evidence of confusion, but reflections of an internal harmony between seemingly opposing forces. To an outsider, though, this balance can look like inconsistency or emotional chaos. They are also often decades ahead in terms of emotional and psychological insight. They pick up on behavioral patterns, social dynamics, and emotional shifts long before others do. This foresight can be unsettling, especially when they warn someone about something that hasn't happened yet, but eventually does. People may dismiss their insights as overthinking, only to realize later that the INFJ's quiet intuitions were painfully accurate. Even in friendships or romantic relationships, INFJs are often mistaken for being aloof or emotionally distant because of how much time they spend in their inner world. They need solitude, not just for rest, but for emotional integration, reflection, and internal realignment. Their inner life is so rich and demanding that it requires regular, uninterrupted space. When they vanish into themselves for days or weeks, it's rarely personal. It's a necessary act of survival. But for people who equate connection with constant presence or reassurance, this pattern can feel confusing, even hurtful. INFJs have the ability to inspire intense connection in others while remaining emotionally elusive. Many people become drawn to their depth, their empathy, and their spiritual or philosophical perspectives. Yet even after long conversations and seemingly deep moments, INFJs can remain emotionally guarded. This creates a push-pull dynamic where people feel close, but simultaneously distant, like they're holding something precious that always seems to slip just out of reach. In many ways, INFJs defy relational logic. They aren't linear beings. They move in spirals, weaving emotional, spiritual, intellectual, and intuitive threads into their experiences and relationships. Trying to understand them using conventional frameworks often lead to misunderstanding or mislabeling. They're not being difficult. They're being real. To truly understand an INFJ, one must be willing to go beyond appearances, ask deeper questions, and accept that some answers will come in silence, or even years later, if at all. And that is why they remain so confusing. If you're an INFJ, ensure to check out our INFJ Mastery course. The link is in the description of this video.